how does your dragon of self-doubt show up? Does it tell you that you're not good enough? Does it keep you focused on what other people think? We all have these dragons, but as my guest this week, Katherine Wintsch, founder of the Mom Complex and author of the book Slay Like a Mother, shares, our opportunity is to slay these dragons of self-doubt so that we can care less about what other people think and build the career and the life that works best for us. Here, she shares her journey from marketing and advertising executive to entrepreneur and how she learned to build her confidence along the way. She also offers advice for all of us on questioning our narratives and prioritizing our own needs so that we can become our best selves. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Meninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Katherine. It's such a pleasure to meet you. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'd love to start by inviting you to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Katherine Wintsch. I am a lot of things, I guess, a mother, sister, daughter, wife, friend, all of those things. But I live in Richmond, Virginia. I run a consulting company called the Mom Complex, and we work with mostly Fortune 500 companies to help them develop better products and services for mothers, which is an awesome job. We have 10 people. And it's amazing. And I am also the author of a self-help book for women and mothers called Slay Like a Mother. And it's about slaying your dragon of self-doubt in a way that I myself have done and accomplished, which I'm sure we'll get into. Mother of 2 teenagers, married to a great man from Switzerland. And yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. And I really appreciate your bringing the motherhood angle to this conversation. And I'm curious how you got here. What made you decide, based on your own experience, that you were going to focus on supporting mothers?
Well, I grew up in the marketing and advertising industry, which was a really exciting industry. And I did consumer research to understand, what makes people tick and what they want from brands and companies. And during my career in marketing and advertising, I became a mother to 2 children, 2 years apart. And it was on my maternity leave when I started watching advertising to mothers. So picture I'm at home, I have a 2-year-old and an infant, and I'm either, crying or drinking myself to sleep every night. And the commercials of, on TV were like Kelly Ripa dancing around in high heels and making cupcakes. And it really bothered me. I thought, they're not doing this intentionally. They must really think that's what this is like, or that's what we aspire to. And so it was just out of that pain point. And then I just started talking to a lot of my existing clients about, marketing to moms and how it could be improved. And then now the focus of our company is even further upstream of helping companies develop better products and services for mothers. So it's been a fun ride.
What does product and services look like?
So, for example, we helped Chobani come out with a new line of yogurt for kids, and we worked directly with mothers to figure out, do you want it in a package? Do you want it in a tube? Should it have a spoon? Should it have sprinkles? Should everything be connected? How much is it a replacement for dessert? Is it a breakfast yogurt? So really using their own kind of consumer behavior. So that's one example. Another example would be the shopping carts at Walmart in the UK. We helped them develop shopping carts that were lower and wider so that you could get an infant car carrier on top of the shopping cart and it would not disrupt your view of the store. So when you put an infant on top of a shopping cart, you can't actually see where you're going. It's terribly frustrating. And so things like that, like just looking at how the needs of mothers can be met by these big companies.
It's so interesting because some of the things that you're describing, well, especially that shopping cart example that you just gave, I think of how often I did that and just never questioned that there was another way to do it, right? That there might be a better solution. We just kind of went with what we had. It strikes me how uniquely positioned you were to go into the space, having the marketing and advertising background that you had. Like, how was that decision for you to think about making this kind of shift? And like, did you have any doubts? Did you have any sort of internal conflict around making this kind of a change?
Yeah, I mean, my whole career, I was successful on the outside. So I was a senior vice president at an advertising agency that was pretty well known, and it was admired, and I was young and I was successful. And so it impressed a lot of people on the outside, but on the inside, it wasn't enough for me. I was working 80 hours a week. I was just kind of a shell of a human being, just exhausted on the inside. And that business model in advertising is like always on, always hustling, always doing new business pitches. It's never enough. You never turn it off. It's like a faucet. And so I wanted to get away from that. And so becoming an entrepreneur and, running the mom complex was very freeing to me because I'm no longer on that hamster wheel of like more. And people think it's so risky to become an entrepreneur, but I don't work anywhere near as many. I bet you I don't work half as many hours as I did is when I was, employed in the advertising industry. So it's not always true that being an entrepreneur and owning your own company has to be a grind. And my company is not a grind because growth is not our goal. We've said as a company, we have 10 people. We know what it takes to pay those 10 people well, give people lots of vacation and, balance, maternity leaves, etc. And we don't need more than that. And so that's our revenue goal. And that's our revenue goal every year. And so it's not this sense of like, well, okay, we did this much money last year. So what are we going to do next year? And what are we going to do next year? It's like, no, it's pretty flat. And that gives us tremendous peace of mind, tremendous balance. It's really beautiful.
That's so interesting because I think about that in a couple of ways. Number one is from an entrepreneurial perspective, the power or the freedom to set that definition of success for yourself. That, we all have our own definitions of success, whether we work for others or we work for ourselves, but we are influenced by the company's definition of success in many ways when we're not in an entrepreneurial role. And so you're describing like a really ideal scenario where you've determined this is what we need in order for all of us to kind of meet our own needs and our own goals. And that works. And I wonder, is there anything that you think you would advise people who don't necessarily have that kind of freedom to think about in terms of how maybe they can manage the hamster wheel a little bit better?
Well, I mean, I did see it even in advertising. There was a guy, Bob, and, he was a writer and he said, to the company, I don't ever want to be a creative director. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to go up, and I just at the time was like, oh, what, but that's not what Bob wanted to do. He just wanted to do the work. He wanted to be a writer. So I think that, that's one potential is, can you be happy in your position and not always be gunning for the next title or, because yes, it comes with more money. And if you need more money, then do that. But if, you don't need the money to, do what you need to do, then, what are you chasing?
Yeah. And that chasing word is important, I think, because I do think that there is an internal and an external dynamic at play. We've been conditioned socially to believe that success is all about climbing the ladder, doing it as quickly as possible, that if we take a breath, that we're, we're lazy or we're slowing down in some way.
Yeah. Oh, that's a strong narrative, that for sure, that you have to be hustling, all the time. But Ariana Huffington used to always talk about the third metric, and the third metric is what's important to you outside of money and power, because society says that's, it's money and title, it's money and power. But what is your third metric? And I was kind of stewing on entrepreneurialism at the time when I heard her talk about this. But for me, my third metric is impact, meaning I want to impact the lives of other people. And so when I help a company develop a new yogurt or a new shopping cart or a better shopping experience, like I have impacted people's lives. I've made something better, in their lives. Or with my book, I'm helping to heal women from their self-doubt. And so for me, even in my career, if I had the impact, I didn't need the money and the power. That wasn't as important to me, as long as, even within advertising, that's why I kind of started focusing on moms. Even within my company, I started focusing on moms, and that gave me the impact that I wanted. And then that made the money, less important, and certainly not the only metric as it often is.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really important point too, because I hear from women a lot who feel almost shame and guilt if they don't want, like the example you shared of Bob, don't want to be creative director. There must be something wrong with me, right? Well,
yeah.
How can I tell my boss that I don't want to grow? They're going to think that I'm not committed. They're going, there's all of these stories that we tell ourselves that we should want whatever's next, and we should want it now. Right?
Yeah. So that is a perfect example of what I talk about in my book, So Like a Mother, and that is a dragon of self-doubt that's inside of you. So that is an example of being so worried about what someone else is going to think, and that it's just going to like fuel this dragon of self-doubt inside of you that's saying you suck, you're not ambitious enough, you're lazy. And, so once you learn to slay your dragon of self-doubt, as I did, now I don't care if people think that about me. And some people do think that about me, because I went from a senior vice president at this really well-known advertising agency to the CEO of what some people say is the mommy complex. Mm. Okay. So a lot of people, like, I took a big step back. And the difference now is that I don't care that they think that, because I make more money. I work less frequently. I have 10 times more impact. I'm literally changing the world, and I've never been happier in my whole life. And so, you can get to that point where you can't change the people around you. And if you do make a change, and if you do buck the system, the system says that you should do it this way. And when you don't do it that way, you have to expect that there's going to be some rejection, disdain. But when it's the right thing to do, you just do it. And, those voices become a lot less loud.
Yeah. And I think that, just going back to what you said about the third metric, and in your case, impact, that is so important too, because if you don't know what you're doing it for, there's never enough money and power to feel like you've achieved, because there's always more out there, right? And so there's never enough of a sense that, like, okay, I've gotten to where I want to be, especially when you're seeing all of the people around you that you identify with, that maybe as part of some kind of a cohort of yours that are continuing to do it. Then it feels like I just have to keep going. And so really thinking about what's your motivation, what's your purpose for doing it, is so critical. And I wonder, how did you get to that place? How did you figure out impact?
I figured it out because I followed the rules for a long time, and I worked really hard, and I was good at my job, and I advanced, up the side. I kind of think about, like, I had a pickaxe, and I was like climbing this mountain, and I was a very determined person, and so I got to a pretty high point on the mountain, following the rules that I was told to follow. And then I just paused and I looked around and I was like, this is the view.
Mm.
This is why I'm doing this. Like, I work all the time. I'm constantly anxious, and if I do become a senior vice president, which I did, I'd be proud of myself for like 8 days. And then on the ninth day, it's like, well, what's it take to become an executive vice president? It's just like you said, there's always more. And so I just realized I didn't like the view. I didn't like my life. I wasn't present as a mother and a wife and a friend. My entire self-esteem was in my job, which is why I was working so hard. And so I think that was my realization, was it's not working. And people were so proud of me. Like when I told them what I did, oh my gosh, and so then there was the guilt, like I should be grateful, for this success that I have at a very young age. But it wasn't enough for me, and it was no way to live, and it was fake. It felt like I was wearing a mask, and I was just tired of wearing the mask and smiling and pretending like everything was okay when I was really drowning, and so then lots of therapy, lots of self-help books, lots of red wine, and I learned to love myself on the inside so that I no longer require it on the outside. And so that's really what changed everything. I don't need the career accolades on the outside. Like, I'm changing people's lives, and that's more than enough.
Well, and I also think about when you talk about not caring what other people think, often what other people think is a reflection of their own insecure narrative too, right? Because if they see you doing something that challenges sort of a fragile narrative of their own, and it's not comfortable for them to question, well, maybe what I have accepted at face value is the only way to do something is not true. And I'd have to think differently about my own definition of success. So it's easier to judge other people than it is to look in the mirror. And so I think that's important too, to recognize as we go through our own career growth and development and think about what's best for us, is that what you hear in terms of feedback from other people really is a reflection of their own challenges and issues, not yours. Right?
Yeah, and there's too many people to try to please.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, try to please there's the people never end, and they're always very different. And I'll tell you, it reminded me when you said like definition of success. So this was a great exercise my therapist gave me many years ago. So she said, Katherine, first I want you to write down your definition of success in life. Not at work, in life. What is your, and I was like, oh shit, like I did, all of my definition of success was wrapped up in my career and titles and trophies and recognition. But so I had to do that one first, which was really, really challenging. And then and only then could I do, like, through that lens, what is my definition of success at work? And so that's just a great exercise of what really is important to you. And, my definition of success in life was about being present and, having lunch with my grandmother or grandfather and, cutting somebody's grass. I mean, it was just like little things. It wasn't, they were very achievable, I guess is my point, but not if then my definition of success at work became more growth. That's going to destroy my goal of success in life, so that was a really interesting exercise for me.
Well, and I think of it too as a really powerful mirror, because if you honestly answer that question of what is your definition of success in life, and it doesn't map to how you're actually showing up, it's really hard to unsee that, right? And so once you have that clarity, there's going to be a lot of tension and discomfort until you make a choice as to how you're going to reconcile that gap. And so I wonder how you think about, I'm just thinking of people listening who are maybe starting to question, am I in that same kind of a situation? Like, what's the first step to take so that they can start to think about, is this my story too? Is this something I should be thinking about, but without opening themselves up to all kinds of discomfort that they may not be ready for?
Yeah, it will be lots of discomfort. You just have to know. So, Iyanla Van Sant is kind of a spiritual guru that I really like. And she says, the life you want to live is just on the other side of the labor pains it will take to birth it. Like, so, it will be a rebirth, and it will be short-term pain as birth is, but life on the other side will be so much better. And just as you just said, you will not unsee, like you can't unlearn. Like when you learn to love yourself, there's no going backwards, so that you put yourself in the right environments to nurture yourself and your soul and what you really, really want. So if you're just starting out, one exercise I would recommend, there's a book called Finding Your Own North Star by Martha Beck. She's a life coach. She's Oprah's life coach. And she has this exercise where you take a piece of paper, you draw a line down the middle, and on the right-hand side, you put all the activities that you're participating in that really drain your energy, like you don't want to do them. It could be email, it could be doing the chores at home, whatever it is, everything that just drains you. And then on the other side, and this is at work, at home, in life, church, whatever. On the other side, make a list of all the activities that you participate in, have participated in, that just light your soul on fire, that you just love doing, love participating in, really, wake you up. And then start to see, just that's the exercise period. But then start to pay attention over time of how you're spending your time. How much of it is in that like dreaded, landscape, and how much of that is work, therefore somewhat more in your control, to change, to augment. Maybe it's changing positions, maybe it's changing careers, maybe it's becoming an entrepreneur, whatever it is. Or even within your own job, taking on certain responsibilities that light you up. But we often skip this step of understanding what we actually enjoy and do not enjoy doing in our lives. It's just knowledge. We learn about the weather and math and science, and we never learn about ourselves. And that's such a shame.
I think that's a very good point. I think, I often talk about the fact that we have a negativity bias. So we're always really tuning into what is it that we don't like, or how do we not feel like we're measuring up all the things that we think we're doing wrong, but we're not taking the time to really catalog what we enjoy doing, where we're getting our energy, what the ideal version might look like. And so often because of that, I do recommend starting with the what do you not want question, because it's usually a little bit more accessible to us. But I think it's such an important thing to think about is, where are you getting your energy? Where do you find fulfillment? Because for many of us, and this was true for me before I shifted my career too, is I couldn't remember the last time I felt excited about something I was doing at work. I remember feeling stressed about it. I remember feeling pressured to get it done, but I didn't remember when was the last time I felt like, oh, this is something I'm really looking forward to. And I think that's unfortunately a reality for so many of us, because we're just trying to get through the day. We're just trying to get the things off of our list, and we're not necessarily thinking about what's a better alternative.
Well, I think that's a good point. And I think there's a narrative that is acceptable. That's the norm. I mean, it certainly was in previous generations back then, it was like, have a job, keep your job, keep your head down and be quiet. But, I hope the narrative is coming through too, that like it is possible to find a job and a career that you absolutely love, that just lights everything inside of you on fire, and I had it in a much larger company, advertising. I have it on my own. I certainly should have it on my own. I always tell people, they're like, oh, it's so amazing. Like, how much balance and success do you have? And I'm like, well, I know, but I built like that was good. Like that was the goal. And if it's miserable and you created it, then you can change it.
You have only yourself to blame.
Yeah, but even on the big, I have friends that work for huge companies and they're so empowered and inspired and work with smart people. Like, it is possible. And so hopefully the people that love what they do will talk about it more, because, I think a lot of people accept the job that they have thinking that work has to suck, that it's work versus life. But I love my work as much as I love my life. Like, it's so empowering. But anyway, my point is, like, it's possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to emphasize. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and start your own company. It doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur to empower yourself to, again, sort of take stock of what you enjoy doing, what you do well, and position that to your employer as a better opportunity for you to add value, for you to make a more meaningful impact.
Yep, definitely. And then maneuvering within your company, there are certain things you can, work on more, express your passion for, so that you can have some of that joy.
I have to ask this question because we're talking about moms in particular. What do we do with the mom guilt, or the narrative that says, like, oh, I should just be worried about my kids' happiness, or, I don't have time to think about myself because my family needs me, or my business needs me, or my friends need me. Like, there's just this added layer of guilt that goes along with taking care of our own needs, because it always feels like we should be putting that energy towards our own children, or for those who aren't moms, right? I don't mean to leave you out of the conversation. There's always some other responsibility that we feel is more important than our own. How do you think about that piece of this?
Well, I write a lot about that in my book, Slay Like a Mother, and it's really a major phenomenon. And it's happening for two reasons. One, it's the narrative of our society, this like mom as martyr, it's you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to be selfless. And that's what's held up as, the narrative of the ideal mother. So I think first it's questioning that narrative, like, you can work outside the home and still love your children, and you don't have to make all the meals, in your house. So I think it's really questioning, who made these rules, and, do we have to follow them? So I have two teenagers, able-bodied teenagers, amazing husband. And so I said, to them, other than history, give me one reason why I would be the person in this family that has to buy and cook and make all the food. Like, why would it be me other than the past, and the people who made up these rules are dead. Like, that this was long ago, that women, but I work as much, if not more, than my husband, and so like, we can all share in this. So I think it's questioning that narrative in a really healthy way. Like, I'm not taking on that burden in my house. I don't wash my children's clothes. I don't wash my husband's clothes. Like, everybody's, willing. They're able, and they can, and they do. Or they don't, and I don't care if they wear dirty clothes. But anyway, it's questioning, that narrative. But then also it's slaying your dragon of self-doubt and believing in yourself enough to know that what other people say about you or think about you may not be the truth. So, just as an example, I have two children in two different schools. I don't spend very much time at my son's school because my husband does more there. And so when I go there, I feel like a loser because I don't know the mothers, I don't know the teachers, I don't really know where his classroom is, and it makes me feel really bad about myself for a minute. But then I realize that this is one sliver of the view of me, like, I have a very full life, and I have a very full life with my son. And if anybody thinks in this one sliver of a moment of showing up at his school that I'm a bad mother, then they're wrong. Like, I don't need to feel guilty about that, because if they were thinking that, it's not true, and I can't be everywhere at one time. And, showing up to his classroom, I don't think affects how much he knows I love him. Do you know what I mean? Like, but
Yes.
but I had to slay this dragon of self-doubt. I had to find my love from the inside. And now, I don't have that extra layer of guilt. I might have some disappointment of like, oh, I wish I knew more here, but it's not like I'm a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such an important piece of the conversation too, is sort of the agreements that you work out with your partner, with your children. It's funny, when you were talking about that, it made me realize like I've never met my son's orthodontist. I don't know. I've never met him because my husband has managed that process from the very beginning. And I often think about, as a substitute for guilt, which is often our go-to feeling, is gratitude. Like, oh, I could feel guilty that I don't know my son's orthodontist, or that you don't know your son's classroom. But instead, I feel grateful that I have a partner who takes that on, and that I'm able to support my son in other ways, and that it doesn't have to. I love your like, what besides history means that I have to be the one to do this. I think we all have to define our own roles and responsibilities within our own living situations. And who says that it has to be?
And then it's like you just carry on, and again, it's almost like I just expect it, like I expect a little bit of the backlash, or like, oh, your children do their own laundry, and I'm like, yeah, they have since they were 8, like that, yes. And again, I don't care if their clothes are dirty. Like, that is not a reflection of me. That's a decision that they make. And, I can draw that boundary. I think that's another healthy boundary. Like, yes, you're in my home, but everything you do doesn't mean that I suck. This doesn't always.
And their future roommates and partners will thank you for giving them that life skill too, right? Because I think that's important too, is that, we're equipping them to be independent and to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. But again, there's people who love to cook. There's moms and women that, and if that's your jam and you love to do it, then you should do it. Like, I'm not saying wholeheartedly, toss in the apron, but it's like, if you don't enjoy doing something that society says that you should do, or you don't enjoy doing it in a certain way, or whatever, then eventually you'll just get the courage to do it, and you'll see that the world keeps spinning, and people don't care as much as you think they're going to care.
And I think that's a really important thing to emphasize too. People don't care as much as you think they do. And if they do, it's because of their own stuff, not because of yours, because you're shining a mirror on them, and they are uncomfortable with what they're seeing in themselves.
And the earlier you can do this, the better, because like what we're talking about now is this, like, we've been hustling, like run, go get the money, go get the title, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm out of gas, I'm exhausted, and for none of this really mattered. Like, this is, we just get blinded to the, it's like this gravitational pull towards more that is, again, if that's your jam, then have at it. But if it's not, there is a different path.
Well, and I think about that a lot too, because you hear from women who reach a certain point in their lives who will say things like, I don't care anymore. So we know it's coming. We know that we are going to reach a point where these things don't matter in the way that they do now. So how do we accelerate that? How do we get to that place sooner, so we can enjoy it more, so that we can feel less guilt, so that we can feel more empowered, so we can, do the things that bring us energy? And so that's how I'm thinking about our conversation, is helping people get there more quickly.
Well, I love that you say that. It's exactly what I say about my book. I say the whole purpose of this book is not to take you in a different direction. It's to take you in the direction that you're already going, but to get you there quicker. Like, if you live to be 85, like, this is what you're going to say, period. Everybody does. And so, like, can you get there at 55, 35, 13, so that you don't have to, wear that mask and that facade, and follow all of these unwritten but very powerful rules and narratives.
Yeah, gosh, this has been so great, Katherine. I really appreciate your insights. Where can people find you if they want to read your book or learn more about you and your story?
Yeah, I would invite anybody to follow us on Instagram at Slay Like a Mother. And you can also sign up for On feellikeamother.com, you can sign up for our newsletter, and we send out lots of blog posts, podcast interviews, all about how to slay your dragon of self-doubt.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that for all of us. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.